It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, February 21st, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is so happy for Travis Konechny and Travis Sanheim winning the Four Nations with Team Canada.
Yeah, congrats to him.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, so we are going to get to the Flyers themselves, the Oilers game coming up on Saturday, which is going to be bizarro land. And so much more. But of course, we have to lead with Team Canada winning the Four Nations tournament in dramatic overtime fashion, just as you predicted.
Yeah, I mean, well, I actually thought the U.S. would win, but I knew it would go to overtime. And
Yes,
once it
that's for
goes to
sure.
once it goes to overtime, anything could happen. And look, the U.S. had great chances. I've always told people Jordan Binnington's an excellent goalie, and maybe people will stop, saying garbage about him, but maybe they won't. But he earned it. He stopped some big shots. Connor Hellebuck has nothing to be ashamed of. This was a
No,
goaltending clinic. So yeah, it goes like that. I did see some tweets like, how is somebody that far open? You know how that happens? Mental fatigue. These guys are
yeah.
like they're injured. Some of them are ill. They're playing as much as they can, as hard as they can, and mistakes happen.
Yeah, I really thought that Canada figured out what to do about Team USA's physicality. And what they did was had sharper, crisper passes.
Hmm.
And I thought Team USA relied too heavily on some stretch passes that didn't work.
Hmm.
They had a ton of giveaways early in the game, and that really just didn't create opportunities for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. But you got to admit, in overtime, they had like, if you want to go with your high danger chances, they led that. I mean, they
Oh,
really,
sure.
yeah,
And that's they tightened it up as the game
they
went
did
on. I just think in the early goings, they could have had some more opportunities there,
for
but for
sure.
those giveaways. But yeah, I really think that Canada did an excellent job overall of adjusting from the previous game that they played. And, especially with some last minute substitutions. Of course,
Hmm.
we're kind of bummed for Travis Konechny that he didn't
Yeah.
get to play in that game for sure. But Travis Sanheim was in on that second pairing for Team Canada. I thought he had a real solid game again.
Yeah, he was good. He was out there in overtime. No, they had faith in him, and he did look good. For whatever reason, there's always going to be fans that find issue with his game, but I don't have any issue.
Yeah, and I talked to him after the game in the locker room, and he talked specifically about the defense and their mission out there, and they feel like they accomplished it as a group because he's a team player, so he's going to say it that way and not talk about his own game. And I just like it was just a really impressive win in an incredible game of hockey overall. Like really, either team could have won it.
Yeah, they fought for every inch on the ice. The only thing I didn't need to hear was like, Travis Sanheim is from a town of 500 people. Like, we didn't need to hear that on the broadcast. We were all kind of getting sick of that. But no, I'm happy for him. He's put in the work. He's really become a good defenseman, and he played on a top team. Making the Olympic team will be hard still, even though he did really well in this, because they're just loaded. Both teams are
Yeah,
loaded.
yeah, absolutely. It is going to be tough competition for both of these teams to make that squad
Yeah.
next year. And, I think that ultimately in this game, there was a lot of noise, no doubt. There was a lot of consternation, a lot of talk about the politics of it all. And I think that it's still there. It's not going anywhere.
Oh,
But
no, it was on
ultimately,
TV right after the stations that don't normally cover sports were all over that part of it.
yeah, I just think that ultimately, at least in the building, it felt like the hockey took over. and that it really, in
That's
the
good.
end, especially with the overtime win of it all, with Connor McDavid, one of the stars of the game. I just really feel like the hockey overtook all of that in the end, which I thought, it's a good thing, but it's something that, we can't forget the other stuff going on,
Well, you're
but
not
it
gonna
was
be
good
able
to
to.
have that moment.
It's gonna be everywhere
Yeah.
tomorrow. Like, you had this little bubble where it didn't really break into that, but tomorrow it'll be a different thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. And then, just about the pomp and circumstance after the game, I think they tried to kind of make a hybrid of the Olympic medal ceremony and the Stanley Cup ceremony. And I'm not sure if it worked, but it was certainly a thing that happened.
I mean, yeah, some people liked it. I didn't mind it. I mean, giving medals is fine. Some people are like getting mad about it. Like, this isn't the Olympics. Listen, you can get a medal whenever you want.
You can
I
get it.
mean,
I know. I got a medal for penmanship in
right.
third grade. You can do
Yeah.
whatever the heck you want
Yeah.
on
And
that
I get it. Like,
front.
that trophy is never going to look as good as a Stanley Cup to raise,
Sure.
but for the effort these guys put in, whatever they wanted to give them, whatever they wanted to celebrate, they get to. That's it. That's the
Yeah.
way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the indelible moments of the post-game celebration, of course, we had, the group gathering in the corner, followed by the handshake lines, just all the traditional NHL stuff going on. But in that medal ceremony, Brad Marchand lifted Travis Konechny, who of course was in street clothes because he didn't
Right.
play in the game, and giving him a piggyback ride to pick up his medal in return. And so I talked to Travis Sanheim about that specifically post game, and he said that Travis Konechny wanted him to do the piggyback ride, but that it was probably better that Brad Marchand did it in the end. And then Brad Marchand told me in response later, well, if Sanheim had to pick up Konechny, he would have had to put him in his pocket, which I thought was very cute
That
and
is
very
funny.
funny. I will never forget that image for sure, for sure. But
I feel
it's
bad for Shea Theodore because nobody carried him. He had to walk in the street in his regular shoes.
aw, poor guy. But at least he won. At
He
any
got a
rate,
medal.
I think that, when you look back at this tournament overall, there's some really amazing hockey. And I think it was just a treat for everybody involved, for all four nations. You can say that we were missing some of the superstars of the NHL because their countries weren't involved. But I do think it was a really good event when all is said and done.
It was. We could really enjoy it tonight because on the next show, we'll be doing all those talking points about players who can't start the NHL season again, or some that may be out for the season, like Charlie
Oh,
McAvoy, and that's going to
yeah.
spark a lot of debate.
Yeah, we did see him on the jumbotron in the
Yeah,
building during the game. So so that was, I think, good to see from the fan perspective. A lot of Johnny Hockey chants, a lot of USA
that's nice.
chants. I thought it was, for the most part, pretty respectful in the building overall. And I was pretty pleased with that. But
Hmm.
again, just some really great hockey, and very glad to have been here in Boston to cover it. Any final words before we then have to transition to talk about the Flyers and goals for the rest of the season and the Oilers, which again, McDavid facing Travis Sanheim and Konechny on Saturday is going to be wild.
Yeah. I just think, it's a very good primer. It's not going to be every year. It'll be every couple because it'll be the off year of the Olympics. And I think it's a good lead in for the Olympics. But Dylan Larkin had a very good point, and he said, if you like this game, then more USA players need to show up for the World Championships. And that's an interesting take because
Yeah.
a lot of players do beg out of that. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, that was a very interesting statement indeed, especially from somebody who really stood out in the tournament
Oh,
for
no, he
Team
was terrific.
USA overall. Absolutely. There were a lot of really good standout players, but for me, I would say he's my unsung hero of the
Yeah, I
tournament,
would I would say
or
that.
maybe a little sung. But at any rate, we will be talking about the Flyers and their goals for next season, along with your thoughts on the Foreign Nations tournament coming up next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking the player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance, but plus the app's easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
On Monday's show, we will, of course, be recapping Flyers versus Oilers. Still not in the mindset that there will be Flyers hockey
I know.
again, but we will get there for sure. Plus, we will have our nemesis of the week. At the beginning of this week, we put out a poll to our listeners slash viewers over on our YouTube channel about the Four Nations tournament and how people were feeling about it. And the reaction was pretty positive. 63% saying they loved it, 26% saying it's okay, with a mere 11% total being uninteresting or it's dumb and I'm not watching.
Okay. I mean, I kind of wonder if like tonight will change that if they get word that, I don't know, the game's tied 1-1 in the third, and maybe some of those people will sway over. But if not, hey, it's your opinion. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we did get a few comments here, and we had Via Negative over on YouTube commented about the lack of, Travis Konechny, like we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
not being in the games against Team USA, and that, that's kind of been disappointing, which I think is certainly understandable, right?
Yeah, I don't get the Seth Jarvis usage over him. He just has. I haven't seen it. I've at least seen a little more out of Konechny. I mean, again, they're only playing 10, 11 minutes a game, but yeah, I don't get it either.
Yeah, and then just on a more general note, Jim B commented, the NHL really missed the boat here. Football is over. The NBA is in their boring all-star weekend, obviously, which just happened last weekend with no real
Right.
games. So instead of having a few days of full slates of NHL hockey leading up to the playoffs, when nothing else is center stage, they give us exhibition garbage. Bad job by Gary Bettman. And I think yes and no. I
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
a
get
yes and no.
that sentiment because I think that's fair. You want to showcase your game and your style of play in this break time. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But this
They
hockey
probably
is also great, right?
It is. It is. I mean, they could have had maybe a game or day or two more of games instead of this colossal break in between, the final and everything else, and just the whole slog of the whole thing. The games have been really good, but the spacing is just crazy. So I think it's both things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I see kind of both sides to it, and there definitely would have been an advantage to having actual NHL games during that specific lull in sports. Cooking Camp commented there should have been 6 teams. Also, there's no hockey to watch. Hulu or ESPN should have at least shown AHL games as a team fix.
That's fair because you're still getting your 82 games or the amount that you've been contracted for, but they could throw a bone. I mean, it's not an outrageous thought. Now, cooking camp, that's an outrageous thought. Just saying.
Oh man, cooking is good and
I know
fun.
how to cook. I
Anyway,
like it. I'm not going to camp for it though. Like,
yeah,
just
I don't know what that username refers to, so I'm not
I'm
gonna
sure
make any judgment.
this person will tell us now.
Okay. Looking at the week ahead for the Flyers, of course, we have the Oilers on Saturday. We're going to preview that next segment. Up after that is a home and home with the Pittsburgh Penguins, starting at home and then on the road. Both teams kind of in the basement area of the division right now, but the rivalry still stands.
Yeah, the rivalry still stands. We all are saddened by the loss of Mike Lang. Everybody knows his catchphrases and such. He's just an incredible guy. But I caught up with him after a game. I went and traveled. It was back in 2014. The Rangers were playing the Penguins in the game 7, and Henrik Lundqvist went in there and he kind of shut the Penguins down. Rangers won 2-1, something like that. And after the game, Mike Lang was hanging out with a couple people I know, and I sat down and I just happened to ask him, "What did you think of this performance?" And he said he thought it was the best performance that he had seen in a long time, one of the best ever for a goalie coming in, playing on the road in that building and getting those results. Considering what the Penguins team was like, I
Yeah,
was just
for sure.
enthralled listening to him and getting that kind of commentary. And he didn't have to say anything to me. We didn't know each other at all. So that's the kind of guy he was. So yeah, and he was just terrific at his job. So yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely sending condolences to the Penguins family
Yep.
on that loss. After that, the Jets are in town. And then we have to look ahead to March 4th after that, where Farabee and Frost are going to be playing
Dum, dum,
against the
dum.
Philadelphia Flyers. That's going to be a rough one for sure.
I imagine in that one for warm-ups, there'll be a lot of talking out at the center ice there for each side, but
Yeah,
not trash talking, just catching
I
up and
know.
talking.
I
Uh,
know.
that one will be emotional for a lot of people, and I get why. Uh, the Winnipeg one, the only thing you can hope for is that Hellebuck's not playing. That's it.
I think pretty much that's it for sure, especially given, how he's played
Yeah.
generally in Four Nations. I feel like he's hit another gear to a large degree. Now, as far as goals for the rest of the Flyers season here, I think obviously player development is job number one, right?
Number one. That's the one that, hey, if you're getting good player development and you're seeing a step forward in this last whatever it is, quarter of the season, less than that, whatever it is, uh, then you could say, all right, we got some good results here that could step into next year. If it's going to go like last year and it's going to be like this somewhat fight for the playoffs and it's going to come down to the last week and certain guys aren't going to get called up because the team's still quote unquote in it, then that's going to be a mistake. And
Right.
to me, you can't have another year of that. So we'll see. There are some other players that should be getting call ups all throughout this end of the season now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have said to your point, I would like to see Jacob Gaucher again. I
Mm-hmm.
think he deserves it. I think we want to see Helge Grans, we want to see
Yep.
Samu Tuamala, Adam Ginning, and I
Yep.
think Rodrigo Abels for sure.
Yeah, for more than one game for some of them.
And I think there's the Ollie Lixell question. I don't think they're going to call him up again,
No,
but
unfortunately, I think they're probably not going to, and that's a shame. But all right, there's a lot of others you could look at and you should look at.
yeah. And now I think as far as the Flyers play in general and systems and, the power play, which we're going to talk about
Oh, the
next
power
segment
play.
a little bit. But I think that, looking at the way the Flyers have played, especially, we just talked about Frost and Farabee being gone. And we talked yesterday on the show about the team culture and how that has changed. I think reestablishing the culture and whatever you want it to be and getting the room solid for the remainder of the season. So whoever's back next year can carry that torch into next season a little bit.
Sure, but you already gave me a bunch of ifs there, and so to me, yes, definitely keep exerting the culture, but you have to change the way you're using this team, usage and otherwise. It is a
Yes.
different team now. You can't just say it's the same formula and you guys all have to work within that. No, no, it's changed now. Put the Russians together, put them, if you want to even just put them on the third line, fine, but put them together. But still they should be on a higher line and see what you have there. That's, to me, that should be the easiest thing. And they've been defiant in that, and it makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they do against Edmonton. Obviously, again, with the missing players, it's hard to tell what
Yeah.
the plans are here, but we'll absolutely get a hint as to what the rest of the season could look like in the game against
I mean, they could
Edmonton.
just remember at home, they could make sure that they have at least 3 Russians on the ice, not counting the goalie, right? Because you could have Zamula out there too. Why wouldn't you?
100%. And yeah, I think that is absolutely the watchword for the remainder of the season. Make sure you know exactly what you have in all your assets so that you can
Yes.
maximize the trade deadline and this upcoming off season, because the Flyers, I think, are at a juncture where next year is the step forward, right? And if you don't have that information, you can't be effective.
Right. Yeah, you gotta know that once the season ends, your exact plan for, and even though the draft is further on, in case you're gonna try and make a trade at the draft, not for who you're drafting, but the
Right.
trade at the draft and for your off
Right.
season, who are you targeting?
All right. Well, we're going to preview that game against Edmonton coming up next. Life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer you one size fits all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same day coverage of up to $5 million, no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. Select Quote, they shop, you save. All right, Russ. So we have a Flyers game tomorrow, and I
Really?
think the big questions here is where will Jakob Pelletier slot in the lineup? And to your point in the last segment, are they going to make any additional changes to try and maximize information gathering and maximize effectiveness out there?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be on the 4th line to start. That's where I think he'll be.
I think so too. Now, reports from Jackie Spiegel, who was on site at practice yesterday. Obviously, Sam Urson is back from Four Nations, so he was there for day 2 of practice. Ryan Paling and Rasmus Ristolainen were in regular jerseys. Owen Tippett was still in a non-contact jersey at this point.
This is really concerning. I mean, he was already not having a great season, and now he's got some sort of prolonged injury here. This isn't good. I mean, we have no transparency here, so I can't even tell you what it is. I've lost the thread on that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that makes it all the more important that you put Kuzmenko up on the line with
Right.
Mitchkov, right? If
Yeah.
especially if Owen Tippett is unavailable.
Right. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer that you would put Kuzmenko in that situation, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think so. And Rocky Thompson ran practice and was available after practice. We talked about the possibility of that on yesterday's show, given the fact that John Tortorella was still in Boston.
Right.
And Kevin Kurse from The Athletic asked a really good question of him about the pressure that he might feel to improve the power play. And, for him to respond saying he doesn't think in terms of pressure, it doesn't bother him, that it's a strength of his in particular because he's prepared. And like to me, when you're not finding success on something, it doesn't matter how prepared you think you are, right?
Right. I mean, this is again, we talked about it. We did a whole segment on when you have tunnel vision and you're just everybody's got this same mindset. And yes, in his mind, the 16.6% that they were in January is certainly better than the 15.8 now. Okay, if you want to split hairs, they were 7 for 42. In 2 of those games, they had 2 power play goals in each game. So is this a success? No, it's still bad. He won't admit that it's bad. And the fact that the Flyers still are talking about having all these different people that are working on the power play, including Heatley and John Leclerc. And I don't care if you played on the power play as a player. It has nothing to do with anything. You want to put these guys on the ice and show players where they should go and do it that way? Maybe I'll change my tune. But if it's just from looking up in the booth at a game, sorry, doesn't really help.
Well, and I think Patrick Sharp of that group has the most recent play, right? So
Sure.
in terms of understanding what the current game is, the current penalty kill systems
Yeah.
that are out there that you have to work against, like I'm sure his input is probably the most valuable of anybody's at this point. But yeah, I just feel like we haven't heard anything new and I don't find that this is accountability
It's
for him
not.
in
It's just
any way.
basically it's just saying, we got this covered. Don't worry. And they don't. And
No.
6-on-5 will never get talked about, even though it's with the man advantage, and it is awful. If I could find the stat how the 6-on-5 is compared to the rest of the league, it wouldn't be pretty. It'd probably be worse than the 28th that the power play zone.
I would guess the same. I think they've scored like 2 6-on-5 goals this season, if I off the top of my head that I can remember. But yeah, please correct us if we're wrong on that. But
Yeah,
I'm
look up
pretty
the
sure
zone
we're
entries
right.
on the 6-on-5. They're awful.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely terrible. Now, unfortunately, first game back is against the Edmonton Oilers.
Ah,
We talked about it yesterday that Sanheim and Konechny were playing with McDavid. And now all of a sudden they're playing against him like 2 days later, which is craziness. But it's still fun. I think it's a really fun story there.
it is a fun story, but I'm not as worried about McDavid because maybe he'll be a little tired, whatever, even though he never looks tired. I'm just kidding. But Draisaitl's been on the shelf, right? He's going to be
Yeah.
raring to go, man. That's the guy I'm
Yeah.
worried about for that game.
Yeah. I should also mention Victor Arvidsson, was on
Right,
Team Sweden. So
right.
there is that too. But nonetheless, a very interesting storyline there. The biggest news for the Oilers recently is Matthew Savoy got a call up for their road trip. And he was a Sabres draft pick
Yep.
originally. Now he's in the Edmonton organization, played with Bakersfield for this season. He's a prospect that we talked about pretty heavily his draft year, and all reports indicate that this call up was absolutely deserved.
Yeah, I'll be paying close attention to him. I'll probably talk to him because he's really smart on the ice. He's crafty. He has good speed. He just doesn't have great height, right? But everything else is
Mhm.
there. And again, I think this could be a real plus for Edmonton. This could be a little, extra boost for secondary scoring.
Yeah, he's got 37 points in 45 games in
Yeah,
Bakersfield at the AHL level this season. So I think that those are really solid numbers,
they are.
especially out west. And I think, he will definitely be somebody to keep an eye out for. I'm not sure who's going to get the boot in his place down there in the Edmonton lineup, but nonetheless, I think, you look at the center position for the Edmonton Oilers, where you have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Henrique on the fourth line. That is a lethal group of guys down the middle, right?
Yeah, it's lethal. I mean, that's really good. Henrique has always been a guy that's played well against Philly anyhow.
Correct.
Connor Brown can beat you in any particular game too, just looking back at the third line. But yeah, all of this, there's no break. And their
None.
defense is a lot better than it used to be. Evan Bouchard is an offensive force. Darnell Nurse is going to want to play well in Philly since he's Donovan McNabb's nephew. Who knows? Number 5 may even be at this game. So he'll be amped up too. This is a tough game.
Yeah, speaking of Evan Bouchard, I saw a trade rumor out there, like 1-for-1 with Noah Dobson
Never
for
happening.
change of never, never in a million years.
They would
Like
not
I
do that
just
because Connor McDavid wouldn't want to do that.
no, no, I agree. There's always the rumors that Scott Lawton could, left
He's going
field
everywhere.
trade. I know. And JG Pajot has been linked
Scott Lawton's still in Philly.
there.
Last I looked, that's all I know.
He is. He absolutely is. The Oilers, were top of the Pacific Division, tied with Vegas heading into the break. One game in hand there, but they were 5-4-1 in their last 10, and they won a couple of OT games recently against the Blackhawks and the Blues, so like not the strongest of opponents there, and then they lost to the Colorado Avalanche. So I think this break is actually good for Edmonton to kind of separate themselves from
Yeah.
I wouldn't say bad games. I would just say not the best games they had.
Right. I think
Right.
they'll look at this and they'll treat it as a reset. And I think
Yeah.
that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, and I would say, there's really no point in looking at the stats in comparison because
No.
it's very clear who the better team is statistically. I would say the only thing that stands out to me is that the Oilers' penalty kill is not great. They're 23rd in the NHL.
Yeah, and it's always
Everything else, they're
possible
top 10.
McDavid doesn't play, and so maybe it makes it more of a game. That's a possibility.
Yeah, so we shall see, but we have lots to talk about on the Monday show
Oh
related
yeah.
to more fallout from Four Nations, this game, and the week ahead. So stay tuned for that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. You can send in your mailbag questions, your Flyers thoughts via any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great weekend.